comes. Quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to a very special edition of the Willis Twin Towers podcast this week. We thank you guys for being here as always. Like I said, we have a very special edition of the show tonight. We got a special guest. First time we've ever had a former Bears player on the show. So I'll switch it over to Tim so he can go ahead and introduce our guest, and we'll get right into it here.
Yep, guys. Really excited about tonight's show. Special guest tonight is former Chicago Bears corner, a All-Pro or second team All-Pro, and a Pro Bowler. Please welcome Jerry Azumah. Jerry, how are you doing? And we appreciate you coming on.
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're living the dream over here. We're getting to talk Chicago Bears. It's pretty exciting getting to do that with a former Bear. So we're pretty tickled. So, Jeff, why don't you start us off with some questions or talk, maybe find out a little bit about Jerry and how he's doing and what he's got going on.
Well, I do think it's important that we jump into a little bit of the what's actually going on with the current situation with the Bears right now. But I do kind of want to dig into a little bit of your background later, Jerry, if we have some time. But The first thing I wanted to ask you about was just with the firing of Shane Waldron and everything that's gone on in the past couple of weeks. What do you think led to Waldron's demise? His lack of success with Chicago. Yeah. He did have some good success in Seattle. You know, there was a lot of optimism about him taking over here. And it just seemed like the offense never really got going. There was a lot of discombobulation. I felt like personally that he never really figured out a way to use his personnel properly. I just was kind of curious if you felt the same way and what your overall thoughts are about what played into that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So when they hired him to, do a job where they had a rookie quarterback come in. And we all know that with rookie quarterbacks, there's going to be highs and lows. So when they started, they were trying to figure out their identity. And, they stacked up a couple of wins. And then from the Washington game, it just kind of went down south extremely fast. And they just kind of lost all their identity. So with Waldron, I would say it's just a lack of identity. And I would also say that, it's just very difficult to try to bring everybody together. And he had a hard time, it seemed like, getting everybody on the same page and making the necessary adjustments to move forward. So with Thomas Brown coming in, I think that's going to be a big change. It's still the same playbook, as we know, but it's all about going in the playbook and figuring out what plays are going to make certain players successful at certain points. And I think that with this last game that we just had with Green Bay, I think that they're trending in the right direction or back on track.
That actually kind of is a good segue to another question I had for you. Is just what are your thoughts on the way the offense played this past week with Thomas Brown, and what do you think about his stamp that he left on it?
Yeah, I was actually pleased. With a rookie quarterback, I would like to see less passing, more handing the ball off to your running back. And if they are in passing situations, I would like to see the ball out of his hands quickly. So quick 3-step drop, quick 5-step drop, ball out, dumping the ball off to the backs would be another one that I would really like to see. So, and obviously running the football. I think that this team can be really dominant, like we've seen over the past few years of running the football. I think running the football in the NFL is actually coming back, and you have to have some type of a running game to be successful in this league. But moving forward, I would like to see that. And I feel like they had a nice balance between run and pass. I think they had 34 passes and 31 runs or vice versa, something around there. So it was nice and balanced. But it seemed like they started to get into a rhythm. And that's what you have to do with a young quarterback, is try to figure out ways to get him into a rhythm. I think moving the pocket, because Caleb is really good when you move the pocket. So the play action with moving the pocket with the swap boots and the boots and things like that are just really good play designs to get playmakers involved and get the ball out of Caleb Williams' hands and also establishing a run. So all three of those things, I really enjoyed watching it and seeing what they did. And I think that there'll be more of that to continue on with the rest of the season.
Yeah, I feel like we've been kind of preaching on that on this show ourselves about getting the run game going a little bit more. I felt like they've been relatively balanced, but I kind of felt going in when they brought in Caleb, they would maybe lean more towards the run game to kind of get him more acclimated.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's another good segue to your overall thoughts. Tim, I'll get you in just a second, but I do want to ask Jerry about his thoughts on Caleb as well. Like, what are you seeing in his progress? He obviously had a rough few weeks, in the middle there. Now he's starting to trend more in the right direction, I feel like. What have you seen from him? Obviously, there's been some rookie blunders, but what do you project as his? Do you see him going in a positive direction? Do you see him being the guy for this franchise?
I do. From the limited time that I've seen what he could do, obviously the stuff that he did in college was phenomenal, Heisman Trophy winner. But the things that I've seen him do in the pros, I think that he's going to get better and continue to grow. I think that he processes things very well, very different from, like Fields and the other quarterbacks that we've had before. He actually has the arm strength to get there, but he commands it. So if you look at the last game, in the last drive where they had to score some points, to try to get into the W column, he was decisive with his, with his ball making ability and his decision making. He took that leadership role when they went for it on fourth down. Like, he was the guy that was like, yo, I want to go out there and make a play. I believe in this team. I believe in my ability and what I can do. I need to go out there and show you guys. And he did that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we do have the right guy. I think that he has all the talent in the world. It just comes down to coaching. I've said this at the very beginning too. It doesn't matter who we have. It's all about the coach that we get. And if the coach can coach really well, the players cohesively, and get them on the same page and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Jerry. Just watching the game, it looked like at the end, when Justin was the quarterback, there was times in the fourth quarter when we were looking to come back and win the game. You just didn't see that look in his eyes. He looked a little frazzled at times, and we saw the deep and heavy breathing things. With Caleb, it's like and collected, and just like another part of him just comes out, like that clutch gene. Yeah, almost like that. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, like a Mamba mentality, almost like. And
yeah, absolutely. And you can see that.
Exciting to see.
Yeah, you can see it. You can feel it right away. He's definitely a winner. He has a winning mentality. He has guys that have his back as well. So I think that he's in a good situation. It's all about the coaching and getting that thing ironed out. I mean, obviously that's the big question mark in the room and with this organization. And it has been like that for a very long time with the Chicago Bears on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think that they're going to be okay. They got to make some adjustments, and they can't get gashed up in the middle of the defense like they have been with Billings being out. So that means somebody else has to step in. But offensively, it's always been that question mark of what is the offense going to do? And we need them to do more. You know what I'm saying? Like, the God honest truth is we just need them to do more. And Thomas Brown has been put into a unique situation where he has to kind of take over and figure out what he has, which I think that he knows what he has, but basically go into the same playbook that they have and figuring out the right plays to make everyone successful.
Yeah, that's actually a really good segue. You were talking about coaching. So my question, Jerry, is with the way like the losing streak is going right now, the lack of coaching accountability, the blown leads, the terrible in-game decision making, is it time for Flus to go at the end of the season, or do you think the issues are bigger than just coaching and it falls back on the front office and the ownership?
See, I mean, it's a very interesting question that you pose. Obviously, everything is going to fall on the shoulders of the head coach, as we know. And Eberflus has had a rough time. You know what I'm saying? It's been a bumpy ride for Eberflus and the Chicago Bears. But when they're on, they're on. But you also have a very young quarterback, and they've done everything that they possibly can to like put weapons around this quarterback. And it's always going to be up to his development and figuring out what they're going to do moving forward with Caleb. So, obviously they fired 2 offensive coordinators in 1 calendar year. Caleb is going through his 2nd offensive coordinator now with Thomas Brown. And we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the year. So either Thomas Brown could get elevated to head coach if they want to move in that direction, or offensive coordinator and keep Flus to just try to keep some cohesiveness, some familiarity with what's been going on with the team. I'm not saying that it's right, but it could be a possibility. You know what I'm saying? I think what Flus did last year with taking over that defense and all the coaching changes that happened, it was very difficult to hold on to those parts and kind of put them back together again. But once he got it going, like the defense started to like really accelerate and move in the right direction. Offensively, obviously, we've had our troubles. But if he can figure out a way where if Thomas Brown can be that guy and they can win a couple of games and knock some big time opponents off, then I think that we might be having a different conversation. There's still 7, 8 more games left in the year, and they're all against high powered teams. So if we can be extremely competitive, if Flus can basically show that, he can be that leader and that head coach, and Thomas Brown can be that offensive coordinator to win some games. And I think that, we won't see a big change, but we'll see how it happens. I mean, everything has to kind of fall in place. And if they continue to play well moving forward and win some games, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what this organization does moving forward. But for me, I would like to try to keep some cohesiveness and some familiarity together with Caleb, just because he's just a young quarterback. You know what I'm saying? He's played in 10 games, in the NFL. So super young, but you want to make sure that you're doing everything to move the offense forward, move Caleb's progress forward, and not stunt his growth, and try to get some wins out of the rest of the season. Then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because if, they do have a situation where I feel like there's a lot of people, obviously, who are pretty much done with Matt Eberflus at this point, as far as fans are concerned, but at the same time, I tend to agree with you. If they, and I don't know that this is going to be the case, but if they do play some good football down the stretch here and they go on a streak and they make a playoff push and they're playing well and the offense is humming, I think you got a tough decision to make there. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. I mean, as we all know, the McCaskies they're not just going to be quick to fire a head coach. And it's obviously not going to happen during season, at least in my opinion. It hasn't happened before. So it will be interesting to see if they do decide to move on there. So I guess what I want to know from your perspective, Jerry, is, do you see any coaches in the league or outside the league, or just anybody in particular that you think may be a good fit for this team if they do, in fact, move on from Eberflus?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that too much. I just want to see how this team is going to respond first. We don't know exactly what's going to happen around the NFL with firing coaches and who's going to be available for offensive coordinator, head coach, so on and so forth. So I like to let things play out. I guess I'm kind of like the McCaskies when it comes to that. But I'm sure there's some high-powered guys that are out there that they probably have a list, and they're going to probably target them. But we just have to kind of wait for the season to end and kind of reevaluate and make those adjustments at the end of the season. Because, I mean, let's face it, if Thomas Brown is a really good offensive coordinator and they start stacking up some wins and the defense starts playing well and they start getting healthy and then they start picking people apart, down the rest of the season, then I think that a lot of people's ideas are going to change a little bit. I mean, just four games ago, everybody was high on the Chicago Bears. Everybody was high on Flus. Everybody was high on this team, and they suffered those 3 bad losses, and everything's changed quickly where people are like, we need to fire this person to fire that person. But they're constantly making changes and constantly trying to figure out ways to get better. And you have to applaud that, because they are trying to figure out ways to not just kind of lose the rest of the season, but try to salvage it and move forward, and especially with Caleb's growth. So in terms of like the short list, I'm not exactly sure who's out there and who's going to be available, but they have to focus in right now on who they have right now. And Thomas Brown is that guy. So let's see what he does against Minnesota. I think that this one is a game where they're going to go into it with the mindset of, okay, things have changed. We don't necessarily have a lot to lose. Let's just go out there. Let's play free. Let's play loose. Caleb, we're going to let you, do what you do. And hopefully we can, stack some wins, go down there and stack some wins for the rest of the season. So in terms of like the short list for coaches, I'm not sure, but they just have to focus in on Thomas Brown and Eberflus being the head coach right now. They got to stack some wins and let everybody know that they are a good team, especially themselves. And then we'll see what happens once the season is over.
I tend to agree with you, Jerry. I've said it on the show last week that we kind of live in this knee-jerk reaction society. You know, there's a lot of, as we all know, the NFL is a "what have you done for me lately" league. So
right.
Every week you're going to see this week-to-week thing. And again, like you just said, a month ago, everybody was praising this team and how good they were and, you know, how things were going. And you didn't hear a lot of too much of the negativity towards Flus at that time. So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens again, because like you said, if they start to get something going here towards the end of the season, we might see something different. But I'm a lot like you.
We saw that against Green Bay. You know what I'm saying? It was really refreshing to see. Like I said, it's the same playbook that they're going into. They're just picking different plays and plays that work. And it looked like a totally different offense. You know, they started to kind of establish a running game, and they were like really sticking with that. And then they ran like some really nice play action passes and things like that. So we're just going to have to just wait. I know that the Chicago Bears and the Chicago market, we've run out of patience. I understand that. But now that they made the change last week, and we can see the change being basically moving in the right direction, they just have to stack some wins now, and then we'll see exactly what happens moving forward with the rest of the season.
So I missed a little bit here probably, Jerry, but I had a question about Ryan Poles. So do you believe that Ryan Poles should be retained and be allowed to make the next head coaching hire if, in fact, they fire Flus? You know, he's made some good acquisitions. He's also made some blunders, including Matt Eberflus possibly being one of those. So my other question with that would be, do you think he has full autonomy, or do you think the McCaskies and Kevin Warren will have a little bit of input, because we know they typically don't like coaches that have big personalities?
Yeah. I think what the McCaskies did last year was something that they haven't done in a while. And I think that they've gotten like real football minds at the very top. You know what I'm saying? So with Kevin Warren there, I mean, he's a football guy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that they had that before. They went out and they got Poles. And I think that Poles, the way that he's constructed this team, I think that there's some good things. There's some positives that are there. And I like the things that he's done in the past. I think that he still needs to take more steps moving forward to get this team to where it really needs to be. But I think that they have football minds in the front office, and that is right there is super important. They have to have those football minds to bring in better football minds, you know, and I think that this will be a collective type of thing. I don't think it'll be a decision just made by the McCaskies. I think that the McCaskies made the hire to bring in those football minds, and they're going to leave it up to those football minds and kind of stay out of the way. So if that's the approach, I really like that approach, because I think that football heads and football minds bring more of that stuff to the organization, so that they can help, you know, try to fix what's been going on since, you know, the 85 Bears offensively. So I think that that's what they're headed towards. I don't think that it's going to be one person that's just going to be making the call. I think it's going to be a group of football minds to do that.
Yeah, I it's funny that the last couple of times they hired a GM, they've brought in these consultancies. These, you know, they had Ernie Accorsi when they hired Ryan Pace, and then they brought in this past time Bill Polian. I would tend to doubt they're going to do anything like that this time around. They'll probably just give the reins to Poles if they go that direction.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that Kevin will have an input also, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you also have the assistant GM too that's there. So they have a lot of guys that have that football experience to basically make the right decision. And right now, so far, I mean, it's only been one game, but it seems like Thomas Brown has been a really good decision, you know, moving forward. And that's a football mind right there that's basically done that, and that's moved that forward.
Yeah, so there's a couple more questions I want to ask from you, Jerry, before we let you go. There's a question in here from one of our chatters. He's a regular on our show, Cliff, and he's got a good question here. I'm kind of curious about this myself. What was it like for you? Not that one, although it's the other one actually. What was it like for you to win the Brian Piccolo Award? From what I understand, that's voted on by your teammates, so that had to be a pretty awesome accomplishment to have your teammates think of you in that way.
Yeah. I got to go back to the 1900s. That's what they call it. 99 is when I was drafted. Right. So I won it my rookie year, but it was a special award because it's a team award, number one, and it's all about the team and how they perceive you and what they really think about you. So winning that Brian Piccolo award and understanding who Brian Piccolo was and what he was to the community and to the team and to the organization, I felt extremely proud to be a recipient of that award. It goes to show that, like, when I came in, I was a running back, and then I got converted to defensive back. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just completely raw, and I was just relying off my athletic ability. And I knew that I would be getting into like special teams to kind of get me warmed up, and then I would get into certain situations, with the defense once I started to figure some things out. So the first year was an incredible year for me. I mean, the learning curve was just off the charts, and it was very difficult for me because I was doing something at the highest level that I've never done ever in my life. Running forward and running backwards are two totally different things, and I was doing it at the highest level, and that was just completely just different to me. So I knew that I'd have to come in and I'd have to basically win a job on special teams and just kind of give it my all. And that's what I'm always about. Is I'm that type of person that's just going to, the blue collar worker, whatever you guys need me to do, I'm going to do that. And I think that a lot of the guys saw that in me, and I was able to make like a lot of plays that year as well. And then when I won this award, I wasn't even thinking about the Brian Piccolo award. I'd be like, man, that's a really cool award that someone's going to win. And then when they said my name as the rookie, man, I was really, because I came in with, I want to say 12 or 13 rookies. Like, our rookie class was huge. But I was able to see the football field right away, and on special teams for the most part. And I was just able to actually go out there and make some plays and just try to help the team, get some wins. So when I won this Piccolo award, man, it was really special. It was really heartfelt for me because I knew exactly what my peers thought of me, what my teammates thought of me, what the organization thought of me. And that was really special for me.
Yeah. Do you have a last question for Jerry here, Tim?
I do, and it's a little off subject, but
let's get into it.
Yeah. So a lot of the people on our show know, and their followers, the Barham, they know that you were converted to corner out of college. You went to New Hampshire as a running back.
Yeah.
So I actually have a running back question for somebody who has played running back. The Bears traded Khalil Herbert recently, as you probably know. I thought it was, and Jeff News was coming. I thought it was a mistake. I still think it was a mistake because of the running back depth. So I wanted to ask your opinion on that, especially with, DeAndre Swift's injury history, if you thought that was a smart move or not.
Man, I was a big fan of his. He was a hard runner, good blocker, good in the pocket, just a good every down type of running back. And I thought that there was a lot of value there. But Swift, I mean, he has those intangibles. He can catch the ball out the backfield, which is kind of like an extension of like the run. And once he gets going, he really gets going, and he can be a very explosive and dynamic player. So I understand why they might have made that move, because Swift is that guy, especially when he's healthy. But I mean, the Chicago Bears have had a lot of really good backs. I mean, I was sad to see Montgomery go, especially to the Lions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
what he's doing at the Lions. I mean, he knows how to run with the football. But I think that for the Chicago Bears, and getting back to my original point of what they should do moving forward offensively, they should become a running team. So I think that you're going to see a lot more of Swift. I think that you're going to see the line that's been struggling in pass protection for the most part. If you get them firing off the football and get a hat on a hat, it becomes fun. And I feel like we have the personnel to actually do that, but we just have to stick with that. And I think that with Thomas Brown making those adjustments, I think that he will start to figure some things out with the offensive line to get a hat on a hat and get Swift, going. But Swift is a dynamic player. Not only can he run between the tackles or outside, he can also catch the ball. And I think that that's where he can be extremely explosive and help Caleb Williams out tremendously, because if Caleb ever gets into trouble, he can just pass the ball off to Swift, and Swift is dynamic enough to take it to the house, whether he's catching the ball or whether he's running the ball. I mean, he had I forget how long that run was off the left end, and it was really nice that he was following his blockers. But that's what I'm saying. Make this team into a running team, and I feel like you have a recipe for success, and you have a recipe of really helping out that young quarterback.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. The one thing I wanted to say before we let you go is it's funny you mentioned the dynamic ability of Swift. We've mentioned on the show a few times. Tim is obviously a big Herbert fan, but I had mentioned that I felt like the reason that Bears brought Swift in the first place is because he had that capability to take one to the house, where you'd see a lot of those long runs that Herbert would make. He would get caught from behind every once in a while, heading towards the goal line. So that's kind of where I saw that, and it's interesting that you brought that up yourself.
Yeah. I think that we're going to see a lot more of Swift. Knock on wood that they stay healthy. And I think that we're going to see a lot of the offensive linemen just firing off the football. I think that that's what they do best. So hopefully they stick to that game plan where they're run first, pass second, and then they kind of make the adjustment off of the run. But having Swift back there has been dynamic. Like I said, we saw what he can do against Green Bay, and I feel like that's going to continue on, especially when the weather gets cold and it gets nasty out, and we can get into situations where if we can keep it close, we can really start to pound people. And I think that Swift is the right person to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we got to let you go. We probably held you a little bit longer than you were expecting to, Jerry, but we do appreciate you being on. We're very thankful for you here. You guys, if you're interested in following Jerry, you can find him on X. He's at Jerry Azumah. And so you'll find some good content from here. I'm a follower myself. So we really appreciate you being on, Jerry, and hopefully we can have you back on again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be on again.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Jerry. Thank you. Yes.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes, you too. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Great.
Excellent stuff, guys. Excellent stuff. That's obviously our first former player, or even current player for that, former or current Bear. We've never had one on the show before. So that was really awesome to have him here. And I think the perspective to get it from a player who's been in the league before to kind of, I don't want to say he's obviously going to agree with everything everybody says, but I think it's interesting to hear him say these things, because there's obviously a lot of questions from the fan base and from the media about what's going on with this team. And there's a lot of stuff that Jerry was talking about that coincides with what a lot of us are saying. So, you don't hear necessarily a lot of coach speak from Jerry. And I think that's something you don't see a lot from guys. And I think it's awesome. And like I said, I think his perspective was very, it was a good something good for us to have, because again, none of us have ever been in this position before. We don't know what it's like to play in a league. We don't know what it's like to play for the Bears. We don't know what it's like to be in this, underneath that ownership group or play in this city. So, it's really a testament to Jerry that he was, for one, willing to come onto our show and do that for us, but also just his knowledge base and the way he's still so tuned in and plugged into the team. He really had some good information there for us. So that was really awesome. But what were your takeaways, Tim? I know you had some issues with your connection there, but what were some of your takeaways from that?
Yeah, I apologize, guys. I'm not really sure what's going on with my internet right now, but it's being funky. But biggest thing is, like you said, Jeff, just having that perspective from a player. I was going to say that I believe, as fans and even media, I believe, we all tend to get a little emotional at times, and we're not very even keeled, and we're so fast to say, well, we got to fire the coaches, or you got to fire polls, or you got to cut the players and trade the players. And, getting that player perspective, like somebody who's been in the room, somebody who's been in the building, who understands how an NFL organization is ran from the player's perspective. A player is going to be honest. That's where you get the most honesty. So, when you get a perspective, like he sees it, how it was when he was a player, how it is now, just from the outside looking in as a former player, which I think it also gives you even more perspective. You may get a perspective from a player in the building currently, and it's another thing to get perspective from a player who has been in the building and is now on the outside, that has now been retired from football, who actually, has been watching the game steadily as it's gone on and seeing the changes and things like that. Somebody who's been invested for this long is more mature in the game, like Jerry is. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, was just having that perspective, like you mentioned before. And, just his thoughts, and, very even keeled, but man, I can't disagree with anything that he was saying. Like, everything made sense to me, especially with the offense. And, he's right. The offense has to get going. That's the biggest thing I believe for any of us Bears fans, is that, that's the one thing that the Bears have always had, is that defense. And, that, like he was saying, you ride the defense, but the offense has got to show more. They have to. At some point, the offense has got to be, it's got to be more balanced, more 50-50 offense and defense than it is, 75, 80% defense and 20, 25% offense. The offense is going to have to start pulling their weight. And he said something else I agree with that we've talked about before is you got to get the run game going to do that. And I think with Thomas Brown being a former running back, we're going to see that happen more often. But again, this is the part that makes me a little nervous with that is, yes, I want the run game to get going, but I also want to protect our running backs. And this is another reason where I thought, and the reason I mentioned the Khalil Herbert thing to Jerry was because I wanted his perspective on that, because was the 7th round pick really worth it to just keep the guy, what his value could be for you on the field if, in fact, one of those other guys gets injured, especially if you're going to start running the ball more, especially in this cold weather and joints and your muscles and everything like that is a little more susceptible to injury, especially in Chicago where it's freezing cold in the winter months and we don't have a dome stadium. So it makes me a little nervous, Jeff. I'm not going to lie, but yes, I 100% agree. We've got to get the run game going, and hopefully that can lead into – and the offensive line looked the best they've looked in weeks this past week because of how well the run game was, and the pass protection didn't have to hold up as long. So, again,
I just felt like
getting that run game going is definitely the biggest thing for me.
I was just going to say, I feel like the offensive line in general in this last game just communicated much better than they have in the past several weeks. I mean, Coleman Shelton probably played his best game as a Bear this week. I mean, he looked pretty good. There were obviously still some issues. They're not perfect by any stretch. This offensive line is never going to, this particular group that they have is never going to wow anybody by any stretch of the imagination. But that being said, they did play better this past weekend. And I tend to agree with you, Tim. I'd like to see him have more like a 60-40 split with the running game versus the pass. I know you want to try to stay balanced, but again, it's just kind of, it's a little odd to me that that's been the case with how much they've had Caleb throwing the football this season, considering the fact he is a rookie and you have a good defense. I would think they'd run the ball more, control the clock a little bit more, and kind of keep Caleb, not keep him from making mistakes, because that's going to happen with, as time goes and as he plays, he's going to make some mistakes, but you want to be able to have less of the burden be on his arm than you would, as he gets further along in his career, when he can start to maybe take over some games. So, and Cliff, you make a great point here too. Him getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less is going to help the O-line as well. Absolutely. The pass rush can't get there as well if they're getting rid of the ball faster. So, I think that's a big part of this, is that they found a way in the game plan last week to get the ball out of Caleb's hands faster. And Tim Jenks was talking about this, the different outlets he was on this week, and I'm sure other people have mentioned this as well. I don't think it's ironic that the offense had more success this week getting the ball into DJ Moore's hands and getting the ball into Cole Kmet's hands. The issue that I had with Waldron, as far as these two were concerned, was with Kmet, they just weren't getting him the ball enough in general. And in DJ Moore's case, I didn't feel like they were using him the way that he is best suited to be used. We're talking about a guy who all he does is break tackles. You get the ball in this guy's hands and he gets a full head of steam. He's going to break some tackles and pick up some extra yardage. So to me, getting this guy involved in the screen game, getting him involved in the short passing game, giving him some room to get moving and getting that head of steam going, I thought that was good. And Jenkins mentioned when he was talking about it on his different outlets this week that it shouldn't be a revelation. It shouldn't be one of those things where it's like, well, they're playing better. The offensive coordinator looks great because he's doing that things. He looks innovative because he's doing that things. They should be doing those things. That would make sense for any coordinator who's running this offense to get those guys going more and to get them involved in the ways that they've been successful with in the past. So I thought it was good the way that in Thomas Brown's first game, he seemed to me in the one game that he's, coached this offense now, that he had a better understanding and grip on his personnel than Waldron ever did when he, in the first 10 games or 10 weeks and 9 games that they played, which was astounding to me. So I'm encouraged by that. Again, it's been one game, so we can't jump to any conclusions yet, but I am encouraged by the way that went offensively. Now, Aldo asked a question a few minutes ago that's very interesting here, and I want to dig into this a little bit, because defensively, they have played well to this point of the season, but the last couple weeks, as Aldo says, He wants to know how worried we are about the defense because last 2 to 3 weeks they have not played as well. I think there's a couple factors at play here. So number one, the loss of Billings is huge, has been huge for this team. And many people talked about that before the season. He was one of the most important pieces to this defense. The ability he has to stop the run, the ability he has lately to get push in the pocket this season. He didn't really do that much in the past in his career, but he's been doing a good job in the pass rush. And in general, as you guys heard me say before the season started, that was one of my big concerns was how well was the defensive line going to play? How much push were they going to get? How much pass rush were they going to get? And early on in the season, we saw that they were doing pretty well in that department. They were getting some pretty good pressure. Jervon Dexter had 4 sacks in the first 5 games, and things were just looking pretty good. Nobody has really gotten going since then. There hasn't been much of a pass rush, and I'm concerned about that because at the end of the day, this is still going to be a good defense, regardless of any of that stuff. They just have a good defense. I mean, it's the difference is when you have that pass rush going, when you have a guy like Billings in there who is making your, helping out in your run defense, and Brisker being gone hasn't helped either. But just when the secondary, and the linebacker play and the defensive line is all coming together and it's all working well, then you have an elite defense. Well, right now, the way I see it is that the Bears are just shy of that elite level to their defense because they're missing some of that right now. They're missing a little bit of that pass rush. They are letting some of these runs to gash them up the middle. And that's been a little bit better lately, but they've been giving up the big pass play the last couple weeks now. Christian Watson had 2 huge receptions on big pass plays. One of them was on Jalen Johnson getting tripped up, which was unfortunate. But they got to get some of that stuff cleaned up. If they want to be an elite defense and consider themselves an elite defense, that's something that has to be cleaned up and has to be better down the stretch here. Especially if you want to play, as Eberflus would say, complementary football. If you want to get your offense going and your special teams going, now your defense has to keep playing strong too. You can't have them get into a lull because they've been carrying the team for the first several weeks. They got to keep it going if you want to win. Again, the complementary football thing. So as much as that's been, oversaid to this point, I think it's important to recognize that is still an important piece that needs to be there if you want to win consistently. So that's a great question, Aldo. I am a little concerned about the defense. I wouldn't say that I'm at 10.0 on the Richter scale by any stretch, anything like that. But that is a slight concern right now because if the pass rush can't get going, I think you're looking at this defense more like how you saw during parts of last year before they made that big jump at the end of the season. I think you're seeing more of the good, not great. And that's a concern. So I do want to see them clean it up a little bit. I want to see the pass rush pick up some more. That's part of the reason why Eric Washington was brought in, was to get more of the pass rush going. I think Montez Sweat's injury, I shouldn't say his injury, but he's been beat up a little bit this year. And I think that is contributing to his struggles. He's still been pretty good, but he's not been what we've seen from him in the past. So again, I think all these things are playing a part in this. I hope it gets better. I hope it kind of turns around a little bit because we've seen it. So we'll see how that goes. I want to see that pick up and improve. But at the end of the day, the offense, we really need to see the offense grow, but also what's the word I'm looking for? Pick up where they left off last week, if that makes sense. So
I will say I agree with you. I think Andrew Billings has been a huge loss. And look no further than Jervon Dexter over the last 2 or 3 weeks. The way he was playing next to Billings earlier in the season, he was just a wrecking crew. He was getting to the quarterback consistently. And now he's not had the same pressure rate, and he's not getting to the quarterback as well right now with Billings out. And Billings was getting a lot of pressure too in the pass rush game when he was out there. So that's been a huge loss. And it's funny, ironically, Jeff, you mentioned the Christian Watson plays in the game. And I wish I would have asked Aldo to find this clip before tonight, but there's Jalen Johnson was on 670 to score, as he is every week on Monday. And they had asked him about that play. And his words were that he tripped up on the play. And he said if he had not tripped on that play, he would have intercepted that ball, sealed the game, and it would be over. He said
he did undercut the route.
He would have been able to jump cut that route. Exactly. That's what he said. He's like, I'd undercut the route. if I had just not tripped, the game is over, which is so, oh man, that's just heart-wrenching to hear that. It's just a gut punch.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off too much, there, Tim, but yeah, I thought that was a great point, was that, Johnson did say that he undercut that route with the intention of going after the football, which is a good thing. You want to see him doing that. But that is the risk-reward ratio there with guys when they're going to make a play on the football. Things like that can happen. Either you can get beat in coverage, or you might slip and fall. Things like that can happen. So as good of a cover corner as he is, when something like that happens, it sucks. It's unfortunate. But, if he does make that play, you're looking at a different outcome. So, you take your risks where you can. And Aldo mentioned this is Bears luck. At this point in the season, it's hard to disagree with that. There have been so many things that have happened so far that it's like, who else would this happen to but the Bears? They lost on a Hail Mary. They lost, missing a 47-yard field goal that got blocked. And you know what? An interesting point of that, too, I want to bring this up before we move on, because I think we do need to get into this next game a little bit. But if you guys watch CHGO, which I'm sure many of you do, we talk about them all the time. They're a great, a good resource for you guys to learn more about the team. And they're on every single day with their podcast. So they had Brian Baldinger on last week, as they do every week. And he was talking about how when you're kicking a field goal in a situation like that, where you're either going to lose the game or you're going to win the game because of that field goal, the block is coming. They're going to try to block the kick, because if they don't, they're going to lose anyways, because if you make the field goal, they lose. So what do you have to lose there? They're going to go for the block. So as far as the Bears are concerned, if you know that that's coming, how on earth do you still allow that to happen? How do you allow that to happen? And now there's been a lot of talk about the penalty and all that, and how it should have been called a penalty that wasn't. That's all well and good and everything.
It wasn't a penalty. It wasn't a penalty.
Whether it was or not is not the point. The point is, the fact of the matter is, you have an opportunity to win a football game. It's coming down to the very last play. Everything, all hands on deck. Everything should be focused on that play. You should be doing every single thing in your power to have success on that one play. Because at this point, that's all that matters. Everything else is already done. Right now, you have a chance to win the football game. How on earth you allow that to get blocked is absolutely beyond me. And if you guys watched Richard Hightower's press conference this week, he was not a happy camper. You could tell in his face and in his tone, he was pissed about that outcome of that game and how his field goal unit failed. So I feel like it's one of those things where, again, like Aldo said, it's Bears luck. How do you allow something like that to happen? I just do not understand it. So that one was hard for me. That one was hard to see. It's hard, especially in a game against Green Bay where you've lost 10 straight. You finally have an opportunity to beat these guys, and then you lose on that. And again, the play before that, we've talked about this in the past with Eberflus, with the decision making. The play before that, they had 30 seconds left in the game, and they let the clock run down for that kick. It's like, why not run that extra play and then use your timeout? There's been people that say, well, what if you lose yardage there? What if you take a loss? What if you fumble? Sure, those are all concerns. I understand that. But the risk reward here is that you've got a field goal kicker who does not have the biggest leg in the world. He has been supremely accurate from under 40 yards. You have a quarterback who just had 3 big-time throws that led you into that field goal position in the first place. And we haven't really had issues with the backs and fumbling the ball to this point in the season. Now, again, risk-reward ratio here. I would be willing to guarantee, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I would be willing to bet my life that you have a much higher chance of missing a 47-yard field goal than you do fumbling the football there. I would guarantee it. Maybe you lose some yardage, fine, but you're going to kick, a 49-yarder or a 50-yarder instead of a 47? It's probably going to get blocked anyways. So why would you not try at that point? Why would you not try to get that extra yardage? And, hindsight's always 20/20. We could look at this like, yeah, if they would have made that field goal, or if they were to, if they would have not made that play and they'd have kicked the field goal and made it, we're not even talking about this. And that's probably true. But still, it's part of it. You look back and you see that, and the fact that they failed on that, it raises some questions. And it's, again, how do you not trust in your guys enough to either not fumble the football or pick up that extra yardage? So why would you look at it? And that's another thing too, is if you're so worried about one of your players fumbling a football there or losing yardage, you're not showing a lot of faith in them. And any player who's going to tote the rock in that scenario understands how important ball security is there. So again, I just, for the life of me, I cannot understand that mindset and that decision-making process. I just feel like Flus gets overwhelmed in these late game situations where he's got a chance to win and he just blows it. He gets in his head or something. I don't understand what it is, but you'd think that the other coaches on the sideline would be saying, hey man, can we try to make this a little bit of a closer field goal for Cairo? And another thing too, before I move it over to you, Tim, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but for those of you who know this, and there's some of you don't know this, I'm sure, Cairo Santos kicks every single one of his extra points from the right hash. Every one of them. It's where he's comfortable. And there was a question about why they didn't try to get the ball closer to that right hash for him to kick that field goal. He was even asked about it. Why would you have been more comfortable kicking from that spot? And he basically said yes. So again, I don't understand why in a scenario like that, if you understand your personnel, you understand the fact you have a kicker who doesn't have the biggest leg. He likes to kick from that hash mark. You have confidence in your running backs to not fumble the football. Why you would not try to pick up that extra yardage and get closer to that hash for your kicker to make it an easier field goal to make your life easier in that scenario. Because if you don't do that, you make it more difficult. Now you're risking the chance he's going to have to kick it low and it gets blocked, which is exactly what happened. So, and Cliff makes a good point. A lot of people have said this. Flus is playing scared. That's just all there is to it. He's been coaching scared. Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, let me answer this for you. He is playing scared. It's because he's got a loser's mentality. He's not playing to win. He's playing not to lose. And when you do that, you're not willing to take any more risks than are necessary. And now, let me put it to you this way. You made a couple of excellent points. Number one, Cairo kicking from the right hash. My biggest thing is, if you are leaving the outcome of the game to one individual player, then you should do everything you can to help that individual player in that moment. If he likes kicking from the right hash, you get him to the right hash. Here's my other point in that. You're talking about losing yardage, okay? If you have a false start, you lose 5 yards. He kicked a 53-yard field goal earlier in the day. That's the difference, okay? Whoop-de-doo. He's probably his accuracy is almost as good from 51, 52 as it is from 46. It's not that big of a difference, okay? Number two, if you run the ball there, you possibly risk getting stopped for a loss. But have you ever seen a running back lose 7 yards on a run? I've never seen a running back lose 7 yards on a run. I've seen a quarterback get sacked for a loss of 7, but I've never seen a running back get sacked for 7 yards, which would put him at that 53-yard field goal range that Cairo kicked earlier in the game. So even if they lose 2 or 3 yards, he could still possibly even get it to the right hash, which would then also help that kick. So there's a lot of excuses here. And even Hightower doubled down on the defense of this is mind-boggling to me. Even Hightower had said, all I know, when we are asked to kick the ball, it doesn't matter where we're at, what hash we're on, what the distance is, what the situation is. We got to go out there and just do our jobs, which I 100% agree with. As the special teams coordinator, that's your job, is to go out there and get the job done. But at the same time, you need to be in Flus's ear and say, hey, look, man, if you want to put this on my guys, you got to put my guys in a better position here on the field. It's no different than the defensive coordinator saying, hey, you want to see the stop here, but we're not putting the right guys in position. Vice versa, you understand the point. At some point, you have to take accountability here and say, yeah, I screwed up. I should have gotten this closer. There's a lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas, and I can say all day long that, there's a risk in losing yardage there and yada, yada, yada. But you also ran into the risk of missing the kick by kicking it where you did. So hindsight's 20/20, yes, but what's the risk reward in that scenario? Whereas what the risk reward was if you ran down the clock and just from there. And we saw what the risk was and what ended up happening. So there's a lot that can go into that. It's just, again, yet another in-game poor decision by Flus at the end of the game when Your rookie quarterback has now 2 weeks now in the NFL against good teams come out at the end of the game, giving you a chance to win after, mind you, one of the best throws, a fourth down play to Roma Dunze. That was a perfectly placed ball and a great play by catch that and throw there. Your quarterback, after my 2 plays of the drive, it's 3rd and 19. They complete a ball, fourth down play, and then he throws another strike to Keenan Allen on an out route to put you in field goal range. And then after that, you take away a win from your rookie quarterback that, for one, can build some confidence in him, and 2, get you out of this losing streak, and 3, get your team a win to start building maybe a winning streak from here. Because this is where the schedule sucks now, as we know. The schedule is only getting tougher. You're walking into these division games, and you could have given your team a chance to get into a little bit of a hot streak. And not to mention, it's the 11th straight loss to Green Bay now. You could have broken a 10-game losing streak. So I'm sick of the excuses. I'm sick of the soft coaching. I'm calling it soft. It is a loser's mentality, but it's soft coaching. It's not being aggressive enough. And if you watch the NFL today, you have to be more aggressive in your play calling, in your in-game decision making. Look, let's just rewind to last week with Buffalo and Kansas City. Buffalo got aggressive on that 4th down call. Josh Allen scores the touchdown and Buffalo wins the game. This is what you have to do in the NFL. You have to be aggressive. No more soft coaching. We need to be more aggressive. If Flus is here, which he is, we know he's not getting fired. He needs to let your rookie quarterback win a game for you, which he has shown thus far he is capable. That's my tirade and tangent for today. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this soft coaching.
Yeah, I think we missed a little bit of what you were saying, Tim. You're lagging pretty good there, but yeah, I tend to agree with you. The coaching has been pretty soft. It's just one of those things where you made a great point earlier. For Tim will understand what I'm saying, because we have an uncle when we were growing up. As most of you guys know, Tim and I wrestled pretty much all our lives, and we had our uncle when we were growing up was the one who used to take us to all the practices and he'd take us to all the tournaments and stuff, because he was very involved in that. His son started wrestling the same time we did. So he used to say that exact same thing to us. He would tell us when we were young, we kind of struggled a little bit. And he would tell us things like, you guys are wrestling not to lose. You're not wrestling to go out there and win. You're wrestling not to lose. And I never understood what that meant when I was a kid. And as I got older, it makes so much more sense now. It's like and that's the way Flus is coaching. He's coaching in a way that's like, it's so safe. At least he looks at it like it's safe, and he's trying to conserve a win and do it in a way that's not going to, again, it's the risk reward thing. He's too afraid of the risk. And that's the problem. It's like you have a team with players who are capable of making plays. Let them go out there and make plays. It's as simple as that, and you'd think after a guy who's been coaching for so long and seeing how other coaches do things, that he would have figured out by now that, there are certain situations, I should say how to perform better in certain situations. It's interesting. So it's unfortunate. I wish that wasn't the case. And I think it's, at this point, it's pretty obvious that we're going to see a coaching change at the end of the year, but that all kind of depends on how things finish off here, as Jerry said earlier on the show. So I think the way I look at this is, yes, they're coaching scared. They're coaching not to lose in a lot of these situations where, and here's another point too. I was just talking about the Brian Baldinger interview with CHGO. He was talking about in the Chargers game, how they had basically the same thing going on. They had short time left. They could have kicked the field goal right from where they were. Harbaugh decided to run one more play and they scored a freaking touchdown. So again, it's like you cannot live in this world of like fear of what could happen. The fear of a negative play, or the fear of a false start, the fear of a penalty, whatever the case may be. You've got to play. You can't coach like that. You can't coach in fear. You have to coach with confidence in your players, because at some point they're going to see that. They're going to see that you don't have that confidence in them, and they're going to be concerned, and they're not going to want to play hard for you at that point, at least in my opinion. So I don't think that that's happened yet. I don't think that they've turned on the coaching yet as far as the players are concerned. But if they keep doing this stuff where at the end of the games, they're not putting trust and faith in their players to make plays, we might be seeing something different there. So before we get to some of you guys' questions, because we're running out of time here, I want to mention one thing. Aldo asked about keys to beating the Vikings, and that's kind of where I was going to go here. So we don't obviously have a ton of time left to talk about this, which is unfortunate, but I think the biggest thing, the most important thing is Brian Flores here, because this guy has shown over the course of his career a propensity to make life difficult on rookie quarterbacks and young quarterbacks in general. This guy is going to give you so many different looks and do so many exotic things. He runs cover zero more than anybody else does. He blitzes out of it and backs out of it more than anybody else does. So I'm going to be curious to see what kind of answers the Bears have for that. What answers do you have for Brian Flores and his defensive looks, especially his fronts? How are you gonna combat that? How are you gonna combat the blitzes? How are you gonna pick those up? What is your protection plan in those situations? Because I think that's going to be the biggest key to this. I would guarantee you that we're going to be seeing a lot of what we saw last week with getting rid of the ball quickly. I think you're going to see it a lot. But I also think that because of the fact that Flores likes to blitz so much, that we're going to see some openings in the back end with the secondary and some opportunities for some passes down the field. We haven't seen that much lately, and I think we need to see more of that. So I think that's going to be your keys right there. What is the protection plan? Can we pick up touchdown? Can we score touchdowns? What I should say is, can we get the ball down the field to score potential touchdowns in that way with the explosive plays? And can we keep the defense off the field? Because I think if the offense is staying on the field, you're keeping Minnesota's offense off the field. You're keeping your defense fresh and rested. You're controlling the clock. You're giving your quarterback and the rest of your offense opportunity to score points and keep the game in control. So I think that's the thing there is. And Sterin wants to know if Thomas Brown can outcoach Brian Flores. I think that's an interesting point. I don't know that he necessarily has to outcoach him per se. I just think that he has to what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of settle it down, I guess. That's not the best word to use for it there, but just kind of keep it in check, I guess. They've got to be able to keep the pass rush from Minnesota in check. They've got to be able to pick up those blitzes and protect. So we'll see about that, but I think that that's a big key there. Can they do that? Can they protect their quarterback with Flores and the different looks that he's going to show them? So I don't know that you necessarily have to outcoach him per se, like you say, Sterin, but I think it's possible that he could. Flores likes to get very, very aggressive, and at times it can bite him in the ass. So it's possible that we could see something like that. I'm very hopeful that we see something like that. But also, the Bears, they just flat out need to win right now. So I think they're going to have to do anything that they can to win this football game. And that means, pulling out all the stops. I think you're going to see some creativity from Brown in this game too, to help to aid with that. So that's kind of my thoughts on the keys to the game and how I see, the Brown versus Flores matchup going. There's a couple questions from Cliff in here, and one he asked a while back earlier in the show that I think he wanted Jerry to answer, but we kind of ran out of time. So I'll just answer it for you, Cliff, if you're okay with that. He wants to know what happened with the Bears that caused them to go from 30-plus points a week to no touchdowns for a couple games. And obviously you're talking about in the situation where they play the few week stretch where we played Carolina and Jacksonville, and I can't remember the other team now for life of me. When they won the 3 games in a row, LA Rams. So they looked good in that stretch. They were playing well. One thing you got to keep in mind too, Cliff, is those defenses are not very strong. We played some of the worst defenses in the NFL at that time. So that obviously is going to play a part in that, but it's not everything. The execution was there from the offense for the most part. They had a better plan in place. And in those games, Waldron, those were the best games Waldron coached with the Bears. I mean, they were creative. They were getting the ball in their hands of the playmakers. Komet was having big games. I mean, and they just kind of got away from it. And so that's another part of it to me too, is they were getting away from this stuff. They were getting away from the things that were working in the last few weeks. And I agree, Cliff, they did look different after the bye. And it makes me wonder if they went into the bye week doing their self-scouting in that time, and they were saying, well, let's try to do some different things here and see how it goes. And I felt like they were kind of getting away from the things that were working for them. So that was a little concerning to me, that the adjustments that they made after the bye week weren't necessarily the adjustments you want to see them making, because they weren't successful.
Well, I was just going to say that in the Matt Eberflus era in general, the Bears have been bad after buys. I don't know if they just get away from doing the things well consistently. They did have the one game following the bye against New England that they just murdered New England, but New England was also terrible. But for whatever reason, following a bye, they just don't play well, at least not consistently for weeks after. I don't know what it is. I really don't. And I'm not sure if it's a Flus thing or what, but in this era, they just have not been good after buys. So I don't know. I just think that offense, Waldron was doing a lot of good things. And again, I agree with you. The defenses were not very good. But at the same time, he was doing a lot of good concepts and then adjusting the concept to the next week to give it a different look. And it was making it tough on defenses, because then they can't just key in on one look. Now they got to look for something else. He did a good job of that. And then he again just got away from it. And they also weren't running the ball very well. They're not starting the game running the ball well. And then everything just kind of falls apart from there. I just think that in order to get things going, you got to start by getting the run game going first. And then the pass game can follow. But for whatever reason, they just weren't getting things going early because they weren't getting the run game going early. And I still think it's a problem, because even this week, the offense started off a little slow too. So that's got to get better. They got to be able to get better from the jump on offense. But any other questions on here?
Yeah, they got to start out faster for sure. I think there's one more question from Cliff here that I'll get to, but I want to address Darren's comment here because it's a good one. He says he would love to see the Bears defense blitz the hell out of the Vikings in the first quarter and mess with Darnold. Typically, the Bears aren't really a heavy blitzing team, as we know. When they do blitz, a lot of times it can be successful. So I would like to see them do something different, because obviously we're having some issues with, they had some issues with explosive plays in the past few weeks. So maybe it's time to switch it up a little bit, maybe get some more pressure on them, because they haven't really done a good job with getting enough pressure with the 4-man rush. So yeah, let's send some more blitzes, but let's do it creatively. Let's just not send the guys so that everybody gets picked up and nobody's getting free. That doesn't make any sense. Do something different. Run some twists, run some stunts, try to get some guys, for lack of a better word, open lanes towards a quarterback, get them some opportunities to get some free rushing lanes there. So I like that, Darren. I think that's a good point. But the last question we have in here from Cliff. And I typically don't like to do this, Cliff, but because of the fact that we haven't done it in several weeks now, and I feel like the last couple of times we did it, the Bears were successful and won football games. So he wants to know what our score prediction is for this game, and he has a feeling the Bears are going to win this one. Well, I agree. Go ahead, Tim. Let me just say what I was just going to say.
Okay.
So I agree with you, Cliff.
Go ahead.
I think, Tim, you're lagging bad. So, Cliff, I agree. I think they're going to win, too. I think they're going to finally get back on track here. I think this is a game where the Bears know they have to get one here. So they will – I think what's going to happen is as far as a score prediction, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring contest by any stretch. I think you're probably looking – I think your score prediction I saw earlier was 24-21. I don't think that's bad. I think that's pretty close to what we might see. I do think it's going to be a close game. I think the Bears defense will hold them to under 20 points. I think they're going to get back on track a little bit this week. If they can stop the run with Aaron Jones, and that's the thing, though, too, is Aaron Jones has been a problem for the Bears for several years now. And obviously it's in Green Bay, he's in Minnesota now, but if they can stop that run game and keep them one-dimensional and force Sam Darnold to throw the ball 50 times, I think you're going to have some success defensively doing that. So let's keep them one-dimensional, as Eric Washington said in his press conference. Keep them one-dimensional, stop the run, and then force them to throw the football. And obviously Justin Jefferson's a problem, so we're going to have to contain him. But if we force them to throw the football and stop the run, I think it's going to bode well for the Bears. But I tend to agree with your numbers. I would say it's probably going to be something like, I'll say 23. I'll say 23-20. I think you're pretty close. I'll say 23-20. I think you're going to see more field goals and touchdowns. What do you think, Tim?
I was going to say that I think obviously Brian Flores is going to bring the kitchen sink. But it's ironic because they haven't had a ton of success on the blitz. They're only getting pressure on the quarterback like 40% of the time when they do blitz, which they blitz 90 or it's like 85 or 90% of the time. So the other part of that is Caleb Williams has actually been really good against the blitz. So we'll see how he does. We'll see how this goes. But I think this could be a game where he does have a little more success since he's been pretty good against the blitz. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly can they get the ball out of his hands and defeat that blitz. And, he's really good at disguising that because a lot of times it's zero blitz and a lot of times they show zero and they drop back into coverage. So it'll be really interesting to see how Thomas Brown is able to combat that and how Caleb Williams responds to that. But as far as the defense goes, I think Darnold kind of had his limelight early in the season and he's fallen off a little bit. Now we're starting to see more of what the real Sam Darnold is. But we'll see how this Bears defense does against him. They still have Justin Jefferson, and he's still a problem. And they've got Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones. So it's all going to depend. I think Jalen Johnson will probably do a pretty good job on Jefferson, but at the same time, you can't expect him to do nothing. And the Bears are not known for shadowing a player with their corners. They just play their spots. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, especially if it's like Tyreek or Terrell Smith that gets on Justin Jefferson at some point. So we'll see what happens. But if I had to make a prediction, I do like the Bears in this game. I think they have to get a win. And I'm going to say it's a low-scoring affair. I'm going to say Bears 20, Vikings 13.
The touchdown win there. I'd be surprised if they won by that much, but we'll have to see. I do think it's going to be pretty low scoring. There was one good point here I want to mention before we get out of here. Crooked Comics says that unless Billings is coming back, I'm not sure how we'll be able to stop the run. As I mentioned earlier, Jones usually plays pretty well against us, and I agree with you with Comics, but if Billings isn't coming back, he's done for the year. So, I think that's an interesting point. It's going to be hard to stop the run, but I think they can. One thing that you got to keep in mind, Cowart has played pretty well. I mean, obviously he's not Billings. He hasn't played as well as Billings has, but I think that they still can stop the run. I feel like they did a pretty good job last week against Josh Jacobs, all things considering, because he's such a good player. So, but I do think that that's an interesting point that they're going to have to deal with there is since Billings is gone, it's going to be hard to stop the run, but I think they can. Jones is a good player. He is getting older. And he's been a thorn in the Bears' side, obviously, but I think they can stop the run. They're going to have to commit to doing so. So we're out of time here, guys. We had a great show tonight. It was a great, excellent interview earlier with Jerry Azumah. We really appreciated him being on. You guys in the chat were excellent with your questions and your comments. So I really do appreciate you guys being here as always every Friday night. We likely will not be here next week due to Black Friday. But as always, guys, I want to just a quick reminder here to please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you don't already. You can follow us all on X or Twitter. Our executive producer, Aldo, is at Barroom Network. You can find me at _Jeff Willis. You can find Tim at Tim Willis24. And again, we probably won't be here next week, guys, so it'll be a couple weeks till we see us. But let's get a win this week against Minnesota, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with another good show for you. So until then, bear down, guys.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.